Bonjour, my name is William Pointu. I'm a trainer here at Le Cordon Bleu, Brisbane. Today I'm going to focus on the truffle, winter truffle. We have the luck to have a beautiful truffle from southern Queensland. I'm going to do a very simple dish today. I'm going to do a truffle risotto. Why truffle risotto? Is just very simple, and the star obviously is going to be the truffle. We're going to start with French shallots, which are sweeter and nicer than brown onions. Today we're going to use risotto, risotto rice, carna rolli. As for oil, I'm using grapeseed oil and a very nice chicken stock. And finally, this is definitely optional, I have a tiny bit of veal jus. At the end, we'll finish it off obviously with a bit of parmesan. I've got some grana panado, which is a really nice parmesan there. And just a few herbs for decoration, that's about it. First, I'm going to prepare the shallots and the garlic. So when you peel shallots, always peel the root first, and then after peel off the skin. There we go, that big piece should be plenty. With the garlic, I'm going to put it on a chopping board and take a chef's knife, and I'm just going to give it a slight tap, and it's much easier to peel afterwards. All right, I'm gonna start with the garlic. I'm going to chop it, smash it, and a quick chop. Now the shallots, cut it in half, and I'll take the root away from me. I'm going to slice it almost to the end. And then after a couple of cuts sideways, and use my chef's knife and do really nice dice. And we are pretty much ready to go. Next, we need a saucepan, and put the flame on low. We're just gonna let it warm up slowly. And we're going to put about 1 tablespoon of grapeseed oil, and we're just going to put our shallots and garlic in. So we want to cook the shallots and garlic, but we don't want any color. So make sure you control your flame, low and steady. So if it's too high, take it off, or even turn down your flame even more. If it's not fast enough, just put the flame up. Now I grab my rice. I've got 200 grams of rice, and I just put it into the saucepan, and I stay on low underneath. And I'm just going to stir this rice with the shallots, the garlic, and obviously the oil. I don't usually put much seasoning. You can always put just a pinch of sea salt on top, but that's it. Always check the seasoning at the really last moment. We have natural salt contained into the chicken stock, and therefore we don't want to add any more salt. We will check that towards the end. Make sure you have a homemade chicken stock. Avoid chicken stock from the supermarket, which contain a lot of salt. If you use this kind of stock, you're going to reduce it, and we're going to have a very salty risotto. So make sure make your own chicken stock. It's been just about a minute now. My rice is nice and hot. It's been coated with the oil and everything. I'm just going to grab a tiny bit of that chicken stock, and I pour it straight on top. So I'm gonna put the flame up a tiny bit underneath, and I'm going to pour enough stock to cover it just slightly over the rice. Okay, so I just put the chicken stock right on top of my rice, and just enough to cover, and maybe one extra finger high just over the rice line. And I'm just going to let it boil until that liquid has almost disappeared. All right, so next I'm going to get the Parmesan ready. As I said earlier on, I've got some Panado Parmesan. So you just need enough to flavor that risotto. You don't want to make put too much cheese. It's not a fondue. So grate a tiny bit of the Parmesan, and then for later on, I've got that little piece, and I will make little shavings just for finishing. So I just put that on the side, and then I need to dice a tiny bit of butter. I might not use all that, but I've got enough butter. And of course, I'm going to grab the truffle, and I'm going to slice a few pieces if you want. So I always do this on a greaseproof paper, so then I can just pick it up and I don't lose any truffle, because sometimes on a chopping board it gets stuck. So greaseproof paper, it's a good practice to have. So I'm just going to do a couple of slices so I can put some through the risotto. So make sure you get all the little piece of truffle that are inside. I'm just going to give it a very quick break it up with my hand. It doesn't have to be too worked too much. We just want to break it up. Make sure you don't overcook these truffles. These truffles, if you overcook them, you lose all the flavor. So we've got our cheese, our butter, and our Parmesan. And of course, I've got a plate ready to go, and we are ready for the plating part. So it's very important to organize yourself. All right, we go back to the rice. So it's been about a good 5 minutes now. I just put it aside so you could see. So the rice, as it cooks, so the first part, you don't need to stir it whatsoever. You can do other things, yeah? And of course, if you haven't finished with your preparation, just put it on the side. It's not going to overcook, it's not going to spoil your recipe. All right, so there I'm almost dry there. There's hardly any liquid left. I'm going to grab a ladle and just add more stock. When it starts to dry up like this, but not completely dry, you don't want it to stick and burn, yeah? Just start adding one more ladle of stock, maybe a ladle and a bit. And this time, we're going to stay on the medium heat underneath, yeah? Again, if it's too high, it might burn on the side. Too low, it's going to be too slow for the rice. So just try to get in between this temperature. Medium, it's perfect. So a rice like this takes roughly 15 to 18 minutes to cook from start to finish. And if by mistake it starts to burn on the side, have a second saucepan just so you can change pots very quickly. Yeah, don't keep cooking into a saucepan where the sides are starting to burn. I mean, it starts to color a tiny bit there, but I'm not too worried about that. Now again, I've got hardly any stock left. I'm going to grab another ladle of stock. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start testing my rice. So what I'm looking for, I'm going to look for the consistency of the rice itself. I want al dente, which means it has some resistance underneath the tooth when you bite it, but not fully, you don't want it to be crunchy. I still got a bit of crunch at the back of my teeth, so I'm just gonna cook it a bit longer. So there's a very little liquids to go in. So one more little bit of, tiny bit of stock here, and I'm going to season it. So we start season it, a bit of sea salt, and a bit of cracked black pepper. So just a tiny bit, not too much. Again, we don't want it to be too peppery. So keep stirring it. So at this moment, the seasoning must be spot on. So I wouldn't add any more seasoning. This is perfect. Now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of butter, and I'm going to incorporate that butter in the rice. So underneath, the heat can be lower a tiny bit. Once the butter has disappeared, okay, we are ready for the final stage. So I'm going to add my Parmesan. So that's the advantage of putting it on a little paper like this. You can just slide it down, and again, fold the Parmesan gently. And we can really see that risotto very creamy there. All right, so that's all the starch plus the butter and now the Parmesan combined together. We've got a really nice product. But as you can see, my risotto, is really a thick consistency. So you need to play a tiny bit with the stock. We want it to be more runny. Now, not runny like a soup, right? But if you want like a dropping consistency. So if you open it like this and it comes down very slowly, that's usually the consistency I really want. So just about there. So get your plate ready. So I just put it in the oven just so it's nice and warm. Very important, hot dish, hot plate. And then after, I've got obviously my truffle that I'm going to fold through. I've got some truffle to put at the end. I've got a tiny bit of Parmesan, which I'm going to shave and put a few shavings. Here's some I prepared earlier. And some herbs just for decoration. We put the rice back on. And again, because this rice absorbs a lot of the liquid, you might need to add a tiny bit more liquid just at the end. And that's the reason why you always need more liquid than what the recipe says, because at the end, you really want that consistency to be right. So this is a very important part. When you've got your rice, and I put my truffles in, my truffle must go into it, and that rice must not boil again. So it's very important. So I bring the rice to the boil, and I'm even going to turn it off. I grab my truffle and I pour them in. And there, I'm going to slowly fold in this truffle from my rice. So we've got our truffles in, and they just, because they were really finely cut, they just finished to cook now, and they start to release their flavorings. So I just take a spoon, and again, check on consistency. If you have a tiny bit of hot stock, just test it. Marvelous. A tiny bit. So this is enough. Now, if you want, we can also, I've got a bit of jus there. Okay. So I grab my truffle, and I'm going to do a few slices over. And there I'm just gonna put just a tiny bit of Parmesan, chef Parmesan, tiny bit of herbs. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of meat juice, just for color. This is going to give another little touch to your risotto, but it's not going to overpower the beautiful truffle taste of that risotto. There we go. You have a beautiful fresh truffle risotto. Today, nice and easy recipe to make. It requires good ingredients. There we go. Thank you.